The first church in history was an amazing church. It was born with 3,000 people getting saved and baptized. It continued with people getting saved every day. It continued to grow and expand, reaching thousands of people in Jerusalem. And then when persecution hit, they were scattered all around the Mediterranean area, sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. This amazing church we read about in the first 12 chapters of the book of Acts is a church marked by prayer. If there's one thing that appears over and over as a distinguishing mark of this church, is that they were devoted to prayer. They were birthed out of prayer. As we talked about, they had a 24/7 prayer meeting where the leaders gathered together, 120 people in the upper room, crying out to God. They prayed when they needed to choose the 12th disciple to replace Judas. They didn't just pick somebody, they prayed before they went through the process. Acts chapter 2, they devoted themselves to the prayers. They devoted themselves to the prayers. And that's talking about corporate prayer, and it's probably talking about the 3 times a day prayer that occurred in Jerusalem at the temple area. 3 times a day, the priest would offer a sacrifice. It was a time to get sins forgiven. The people felt like then that cleared the way for more effective prayer. So the church would gather in the temple courts at the time of the sacrifice, and as the sacrifice wrapped up, it was cleared to pray, and they held 3 prayer meetings a day. And if you were a first century believer, you would try to get to at least one of those prayer meetings every day. And if you couldn't get to the prayer meeting, you would pray on your own 3 times a day. They had daily prayer. Peter and John went to the temple at the time of prayer. It was one of the daily prayers. It was the afternoon time, 3 p.m. at the time of prayer, they said. Acts chapter 4, Peter and John get arrested. They get beaten up. They get told you can't preach the gospel anymore. What do? They go back. The church has a prayer meeting, and instead of praying, "Oh God, please protect us from persecution. Make the persecution stop," they didn't pray like that. They said, "Oh God, give us all boldness to keep preaching the gospel." Prayer. Number 6, when the disciples got busy because the church was growing faster than they could keep up with, they selected leaders and they said, we're going to recommit ourselves to the ministry of prayer and the ministry of the word. The ministry of prayer. They reprioritized prayer because they knew it was important. Peter, he was praying. He had to raise a woman from the dead. He prayed before he did it to have the power to raise a woman from the dead. Pretty amazing thing. Cornelius, the first Gentile convert. One reason God selected him is it says he was a man of prayer. He was praying when God spoke to him and told him about Peter and the gospel to the Gentiles. Peter, when he got the vision of the gospel being available to Gentiles, he was out of town. He was on the roof. It was noon. It was one of the 3 daily prayer times, and he was praying. God spoke to him while he was praying. God gave him a vision while he was praying. We want to hear from God. We want to see God directing us. He does it out of a life of prayer. Acts chapter 12. The church was praying because Peter was in prison. James had been in there with him, and James had been executed, and it looked like Peter was going to be executed the next day. So that night, the church was gathered. They were praying, and God sent an angel to break Peter out of prison. And Peter goes back to the church and he finds that they were having a prayer meeting for him. When they faced persecution, they faced it in prayer. Acts chapter 13, when the church at Antioch sent out the first missionaries, Barnabas and Saul, they prayed and fasted before making that decision. Acts chapter 14, when Saul and Barnabas needed to select elders for the churches they had started, they selected them after praying for wisdom. Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas are thrown into prison in Philippi. Instead of whining, they're praying and praising God. God sends an earthquake. The result is the jailer gets saved along with his family. And now they've got a male leader, convert, in the city of Philippi to begin their church with. Acts 22. Paul is praying when God gives him the calling to take the gospel to the Gentiles, to take the gospel to Greece. He gets the calling to take the gospel. He's called out of prayer. He's called while he is praying. All through the book of Acts, no matter what the situation is, good, bad, hard, difficult, confusing, clear, they face the situation in prayer. What does this tell us? That we should be devoted to prayer. Our churches should be devoted to prayer. Just like the greatest church in history, the first church in history, the church in the book of Acts. I'm Dave Early. Thanks for joining us. Our goal is to help you be a disciple and make disciples.